Okay, now we are live.
Awesome.
Okay, so today is March 6, 2018. It's 6 p.m. CST, and welcome everyone to the Roundtable on cultural appropriation versus cultural appreciation. So we're going to start off with introductions. I'll go first since I'm talking right now. My name is Maddie Ronquillo. I am a senior at Loyola University Chicago, and I am the co-outreach chair of MAPA Board. I can popcorn it over to Kayla.
Okay. Hey, I'm Kayla. I'm a senior at Loyola, and I'm the MAPA treasurer.
I'm Marissa Galang. I'm from the University of Kentucky, and I'm the secretary of our Filipino American student organization.
Hi, I'm Kelly, also University of Kentucky from FOSO. I am the cultural night chair for our organization.
Awesome. Nice to meet you guys again. So we're just going to go over the discussion topic, share objectives, and review the format with you guys. So like I said, the discussion topic is cultural appropriation versus cultural appreciation. So we're going to have a discussion about that. And we're going to watch some videos, share some reactions, go through some questions, and have some closing remarks. Are there any specific objectives that you'd like to add for this protocol, for this roundtable? Or just have a great discussion?
Just discussion.
All right, sounds good. All right, so I'm going to introduce a definition of cultural appropriation. So cultural appropriation is a sociological concept which views the adoption or the use of elements of one culture by members of a different culture as a largely negative phenomenon. Cultural appropriation can be a result of power when a more predominant group adopts another's culture and claims it as their own. By doing that, it then diminishes the struggles that the original culture experienced. It also degrades and disrespects the culture. So I think we run into a lot of problems when we talk about cultural appropriation, because I think when people are accused of cultural appropriation, the response is always that they appreciate the culture. So I think that's what our discussion is going to be about. Do you guys have anything you'd like to add about cultural appropriation and what it means to you?
I'd say like cultural appropriation, like not knowing about that culture and just trying to pull it off like you do know it without fully researching it.
I feel like cultural appropriation is more of like the way I see it kind of is like in the media. I feel that a lot of American directors and like Hollywood actors, they feel as if like they know like what it's like to be like a Asian American in America, but then like they like portray it as like something else that's not like in it. Like I'm writing a paper actually about like this topic, and there's like a movie example. I don't know if you guys know the movie Aloha, and I think it was Emma Stone who was like supposed to play, who was playing like a half Asian and half Hawaiian character, but like she's pure Caucasian. That's kind of how I saw like cultural appropriation in my eyes.
Cool. That's really awesome that you're writing a paper on it. All right, so we're going to go into our first video. I have to screen share it. But this is a BuzzFeed video that was made for, what's it called? Halloween. And it is titled Asian Americans Try Asian Costumes. So let me get that queued up for you. I also might have someone joining us, which is exciting. Okay.
I want to go to prom, lose my virginity.
Okay. That's an ad. Which we might have to watch anyway because. All right. Full screen.
first time sex anniversary. We go to dinner every year and commemorate it.
Sorry about that.
Sex for life, bitch. Our daughters get sex hats.
Stop that. Walkers, rated R.
I think the only time I would ever wear this getup is if my Halloween costume was Emma Stone or Tilda Swinton from Doctor Strange.
Today we are trying on Asian Halloween costumes. I am half Japanese.
Chinese American.
Korean.
I'm Indian American.
The first thing I think about with an Asian outfit is just misrepresentation.
Sumo wrestler comes to mind.
Belly dancing, gypsy, heavy quotes.
Maybe like a sexy geisha costume.
That's like what people often think Asian people look like in America, so my expectations are pretty low.
Oh my god, it says Emperor's Lady. Looks like a cross between like a kimono and a yukata, covered in like kanji symbols.
Oh man, like it looks like a shitty tattoo artist designing this dragon. Kind of just looks like a restaurant waitress.
I can't quite tell, like, if this is supposed to be, like, Chinese, Korean, Japanese.
A Bollywood beauty costume. Fabric bangles. Definitely not. I don't know. It could have been better, but really it shouldn't have been made at all.
This definitely leaves like my entire leg exposed because the slit goes like all the way up to like my crotch.
This is...
Look at this. Like, if I weren't wearing pants, it's just, like, right butt cheek.
It really is like quite bathrobe-y.
Literally doesn't look like anything you would ever find in like history.
One thing I am glad is, like, there's no, like, Chinese, Japanese, Korean letters or characters anywhere.
This is the only time in my life I think I'll ever be able to say that like I'm covered in like words.
This whole thing is like a crude approximation of what Indian people look like.
It's not very modest.
I also just feel like I'm like in like a bad 20s movie and I'm going to like serve someone tea.
I'm not even that religious, and I feel like I need to go to the temple and like cleanse myself. These little sins.
Imagine kids roll up like this, trick or treat.
When people decide that the Halloween costume that they want to do is Asian person, I don't think that's like the best. Most
Okay, we're gonna
inspiring
start that
idea.
over. Kayla came in and helped me. She's ready to move, by the way. So do that again. Okay, we're gonna watch that again. Sorry about the technical difficulties. Okay.
I think the only time I would ever wear this getup is if my Halloween costume was Emma Stone or Tilda Swinton from Doctor Strange.
Today we are trying on Asian Halloween costumes.
I am half Japanese.
Chinese American.
Korean.
I'm Indian American.
The first thing I think about with an Asian outfit is just misrepresentation.
Sumo wrestler comes to mind.
Belly dancing, gypsy, heavy quotes.
Maybe like a sexy geisha costume.
That's like what people often think Asian people look like in America, so my expectations are pretty low.
Oh my god, it says Emperor's Lady. Looks like a cross between like a kimono and a yukata, covered in like kanji symbols.
Oh man, like it looks like a shitty tattoo artist designing this dragon. Kind of just looks like a restaurant waitress.
I can't quite tell, like, if this is supposed to be, like, Chinese, Korean, Japanese.
A Bollywood beauty costume. Fabric bangles. Definitely not a thing. I don't know. It could have been better, but really it shouldn't have been made at all.
This definitely leaves like my entire leg exposed because the slit goes like all the way up to like my crotch.
This is...
Look at this. Like, if I weren't wearing pants, it's just, like, right butt cheek.
It really is like quite bathrobe-y.
Literally doesn't look like anything you would ever find in like history.
One thing I am glad is, like, there's no, like, Chinese, Japanese, Korean letters or characters anywhere.
This is the only time in my life I think I'll ever be able to say that like I'm covered in like
words.
This whole thing is like a crude approximation of what Indian women and Indian people look like.
It's not very modest.
I also just feel like I'm like in like a bad 20s movie and I'm going to like serve someone tea.
I'm not even that religious, and I feel like I need to go to the temple and like cleanse myself of these capitalist sins.
Can you imagine kids roll up like this, trick or treat?
When people decide that the Halloween costume that they want to do is Asian person, I don't think that's like the best or most inspiring idea for a costume.
The culture of the kimono is still alive. It's still a article of clothing that they wear today.
We don't like walk around in this. It's like a traditional wear and there's value to it. There's history to it. I feel like that's often overlooked.
It does just make me feel, to an extent, misunderstood culturally.
It's kind of a slap in the face to Asian people if you decide that like it's suddenly cool to wear their clothing when for the longest time it wasn't cool for them to wear it themselves.
It makes you think about all those times when I was a kid where I felt ashamed and felt like I needed to hide what I was wearing that identified me as like a very Indian person.
If someone like me wore this out on the street, no one's going to think it's trendy, cool, or like worldly. They're going to be like, go back to your country, or like, why are you so foreign?
When I was growing up, I was told I would make a really good Jasmine every Halloween. It was about my skin color and not about which Disney princess, I reminded people of. By the way, Jasmine is not even Indian.
Definitely has to be like an occasion in which invited for that culture to dress up in their attire.
You can't just buy culture off Amazon Prime.
You can be a clown, you can be a banana, you can be whatever you want. Like nothing appropriate of it.
I feel really funny saying all this while I'm wearing this.
Okay, apologies again about the technical difficulties, but on the right side, it did give us time to get some new guests. So if you guys want to introduce yourself, where you're from, and if you have an organization. AJ, you can go first.
Okay, sure. My name is AJ. I'm from the University of Michigan. I'm a freshman interning for FASA.
I'm also a freshman for FASA. My name is Christina or Tina, whatever works. And I also go to the University of Michigan. So, yeah.
Hi, I'm Nico. Philanthropy. So that's why I was interested in this. And I'm actually based in San Diego.
I'm sorry, can everyone mute themselves? And then, Nico, could you redo your intro because I can't hear you?
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
Okay.
All right, Nico, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm Nico. I'm actually not. I'm graduate. I'm done with school for right now, like as of last year. But I'm a part of a film and performing arts group, so that's why I was interested in this discussion. And I'm actually based in San Diego.
Welcome. Okay, so we can move on to discussions of the video, the BuzzFeed video that we just watched, or some of us partly watched. Is there any first reactions that anyone wants to share about that video?
After you unmute yourself.
Like, I think I'd say that, like, because it was like a Halloween costume based video, I feel like sometimes people just aren't thinking about it, that it is cultural appropriation, because it's just been like, I guess like some people, it's like, it's almost like been part of the American culture, but like we just like a lot of times like people misinterpret it as that it really is cultural appropriation, and like sometimes people just aren't informed about it. But like I feel like now like people are becoming more informed about that like line between like cultural appropriation versus cultural appreciation.
I think one of my first reactions to that video, I think rewatching it now, and especially since we just had Battle of the Bamboo, I realized that like our culture isn't even represented in that. I mean, like it's a good thing, but also it's like a lot of times we can get bunched up in other Asian cultures, and I think it's really important to know that like we are, you know, our own. Like the Filipino culture is something very different than all other Asian cultures. And like it's a good thing that we're not culturally appropriated in Halloween costumes, but it's also like we never really get truly recognized as a culture very often in media. Any other reactions to that video that you'd like to share?
I guess I just like caught the last. Sorry, it's like kind of loud. I'm gonna try to move, but I caught the last part of the video, but I noticed like some of the people who were, well, obviously all of them were like Asian American, but like they felt like an imposter in a sense, like they didn't feel right wearing these things. So I thought that was interesting, maybe like because they didn't have it growing up, or just because it was in the context of a Halloween costume, which also was like kind of problematic too. I mean, yes, but I think it was interesting that they like felt kind of that intruder feeling, because I was in the Philippines this past summer, and I remember for me processing at first being there, like I felt like almost an intruder because we're Phil-Am, so there's a difference in like wanting to speak the language to the people living there and feeling like I look like everybody else, but I'm very different just because of like my experiences growing up here.
I would say one of the most interesting lines from that video for me was the fact that this woman thought that this wasn't even something she would wear if representing her own culture. And I think when you look at it from that perspective, of how, one, it isn't even being represented through what they would believe is authentic, but two, also having to deal with the fact that you're being misrepresented as well. I think that it speaks towards a lot about how much people don't really understand how much authenticity is not just appropriate, but also meaningful to the people who are being wronged by it. One of the interesting things also at the end was, it was supposed to be a joke. It was supposed to be funny, but it is in fact true. I've met a lot of people who don't quite know where Jasmine comes from, or at least who she's supposed to be represented as. And that gets back to, I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name, but what you talked about, how different Asian cultures need their own unique representation, because we are in fact very unique from one another. We don't deserve to be lumped in with all the same groups and expect to be treated as the same.
One thing I don't really like about like cultural appropriation is just like people who aren't a part of that culture, they just kind of take it as like a fashion statement, or like they just think it's pretty, and like they don't realize how important it is to like another country, or like people who actually like it's actually part of the culture. Like I just like I understand like you like it, or like you think it's pretty, but like I don't know, kind of making like a big fashion statement about it, or like making it seem like you like found the trend or something. Like it just seems like disrespectful to those people who like actually done it for many years. And also like for those people who just joined the chat, I'm Marissa from University of Kentucky, and I'm an officer in our Filipino club.
Any more reactions that anyone would like to share? Okay, so we can get into our discussion questions. By the way, everyone, my name is Maddie. I am the co-outreach chair of MAFA board. And Kayla, do you want to go?
Hi, I'm Kayla. I'm the treasurer of MAFA board.
Yeah, we're going to be the ones facilitating this discussion. So we're going to move on to the discussion questions. We have about 5, but I think a lot of you can answer to these questions. So the first one is, what is the extent of cultural appropriation? This can be in your lives, like your personal lives, or even as you see it in the media, or how you've just seen cultural appropriation. It does not have to be limited to Filipino culture or Asian culture. It can be any culture that you've seen appropriated in your life and on media. Go ahead, AJ.
So it's a bit of a niche interest, but one of the big things for me is one of the big things that I like to focus on is representation in media. And me being a big superhero fan, I imagine that I was not the only one disturbed by a lack of Asian representation in things such as Iron Fist, which is a series on Netflix, or a show or a movie like Doctor Strange. For me, when I think about the type of audience that appeals to, and I think about little kids growing up who need heroes they can look up to, and they see these white people on TV adapting their culture, adapting, Chinese, or I'm sorry, I apologize, Asian traditions, East Asian traditions, East Asian works of art. To me, it's not just disrespectful, but it's also a very missed cause, I think. And it's just the severe whitewashing is so hurtful to me, because I know that as a little kid, I looked for heroes growing up I could look up to, and I know little boys out there and little girls out there are looking for people who they can look up to, and they're not getting this because we are being whitewashed and our cultures are being appropriated by people who are not Asian. That's what bothers me the most.
I agree. I am Nico. I really agree with that misrepresentation is really important for a lot of things, but I feel like when you do see someone of another ethnicity or other community group, other ethnic group, whatever it is, and let's say they do it correctly, that might not necessarily correctly. It's just, I guess, from a lot of my time being in the Filipino arts space, a lot of the researchers from like when I say researchers, I mean people who are going out to these places in the Philippines. I'm in context of the Philippines. I'm pretty sure it would happen in other Chinese folk arts and other historical anywhere else. But a lot of the people that I've met who are doing active research, meeting with natives and such, who are practicing this culture are people who are not of that ethnic group, not of that village, not of that, I guess, vicinity. I've met a lot of white people who are kulintang masters, which is the progressive gong instrument in the Philippines, and that's that's just something that I've noticed, and that has probably a lot to do with they're more affluent on average. They have the opportunity to do that, and I'm not sure if that necessarily misrepresents the culture. When I guess from what I've seen, obviously not when it comes to media and other things, but I guess in forms of research, it's definitely coming from a place from people who are not of that people. Does that make sense? So I feel like that's when it comes to primary sources, it's coming from these people who are putting in the research for these things, for these movies, for these dances, for these works of art. It's coming from someone who generally is not of that, and that's why I guess that's where some of the misrepresentation comes from. But that's not something I don't want to say you can't control, because it's always gonna come when you're sharing something that's outside of a community. It's always gonna come in that form of misrepresentation. Someone is going to have to represent it in terms of research. Does that kind of make sense? I know my words are all out of the place, but it's gonna come from that non-in crowd. Someone's gonna come in and learn that way, and maybe interpret it differently. But the research as itself, as raw as it can be, it's still gonna come from someone not in that group of people. So I mean, it starts there, and I don't really see a way you can go around that, unless they create their own movies, in which they do. They create their own dances, their own art pieces, their own paintings, all forms of their life. They create their own dishes of food. They create their own. They do it for themselves. But like when you want to bring it to another people, obviously, you know, assimilation does play a little bit in that. I don't really see how it can. You can. I'm sorry. I probably like went off on a tangent, but I guess that's what I was thinking. That you always, when you're sharing cultures that are meant outside of a specific group of people, like if there's always going to be someone who's going to come and do almost no one is going to like. At least with appropriation, it's not going to happen where like these group of people are sharing something with you, as opposed to someone even if it's like innocent and they're learning about this another group of people for whatever reason, and it's very innocent, but it's going to come from their mindset, their biases, their expectations, and not in the context that all these people have learned it. And so so misrepresentation is, I guess kind of eminent in a way, but like even if it's as innocent as possible. I mean, not to say that we can't do things to combat that. I don't know. That was just something that I was kind of thinking.
Yeah, I think you definitely. I think your answer definitely goes into our next question, which is how would you define cultural appreciation? And I think that's really interesting what you had to say about having misrepresentation almost be eminent, even with the best intentions at hand. We actually have someone new. Would you like to introduce yourself, where you're from, and if you have any positions at your affiliated organization?
Yeah, hi. My name's Enzo. I'm from Purdue, so PFA. And then I'm currently the event coordinator. And what else do I have to say? Is that it?
That's it, actually.
Yeah, I'm outside right now, but...
Oh, it's okay.
It's really loud inside.
No, it's okay. We had Kenny Stamper coming to join us. Kenny, do you want to introduce yourself and who you are and what organization you're from?
Hi, everyone. Sorry. Hi, everyone. I'm Kenny. I'm from Boston UMich. I'm a senior. Last year, I was the vice president external for MAFA board, and I'm here to talk about battle.
Cool. All right. So just to catch everyone up, the first discussion question is, what is the extent of cultural appropriation? Once again, this does not have to just be limited to the Filipino culture. It could be any sort of culture that you feel has been culturally appropriated in your personal life, as well as if you've seen in media representation. Yeah, and you can even circle it back to battle. And if you feel that that an event like battle is something of cultural appropriation or cultural appreciation, or a weird mix of both. Yeah. Would anyone like to speak to it?
I guess this was my first year competing in battle. I went to it previously, like a couple years. And I think battle is like a good space for, I think you were right in saying that it was kind of a mix. Like for us and like the whole MAFA event, I think it was like a good way to celebrate the dances and like appreciate the beauty of each performance and the costumes that went with it. And then also I just feel, for me and my experience, sometimes I feel like I didn't take as much time learning about the costumes that we were wearing, you know, like I was just, we were wearing this, and maybe because I wasn't on the costume committee or, you know, certain things, I felt like it wasn't as important to me because I called it a costume. And I think that word also has like certain problems to it too, because when we say it's a costume, it's something that's like ornate and different and like, you know, really, really unique. I don't know, like it's something that people wear, you know, in their life.
You're kind of breaking up.
Oh, sorry.
Can you like? Sorry, I like missed a little bit. Can you repeat that?
I just said like for our dance, I wasn't as conscientious about the costumes we were wearing. even though like calling it a costume also has like its own different problems and implications with it, because calling it a costume makes it like ornate and like really different and like exotic. And I think that putting it at that level where it's like a costume delegitimizes like the people who wear those things on those dresses and those skirts on occasions or just, you know, in their lives. So I think people being conscious of what they were wearing is important for battle and the dances and performances.
I definitely agree with like what you're saying with like the costumes and like, you know, not being like totally conscientious of like, this is actually like what they wear and it's not just a costume. And like, I also feel like, you know, after doing battle, this year it was my 4th time performing at battle. So like I've done it for so long. Like with the whole like competition aspect, like sometimes like I forget that, you know, that I'm representing the Filipino culture.
Did you freeze on anyone else?
Okay, yeah.
I froze.
Everybody.
Yeah, Kayla, you froze. Sorry.
Yeah, I thought I did, but I was hoping it was just me.
Do you want to repeat what you were saying?
Yeah, I was saying how like with like the whole competition aspect of battle, like sometimes I forget that it's meant to be a representation of the Filipino culture, and it's not, you know, just like this dance competition that different schools compete at. Like sometimes like I have to take a step back and realize that like, I'm representing this aspect of the Filipino culture, and that's the important part of it, and what battle like is meant to be about, truly be about.
Yeah, I agree. And I think on the other side of it, like I've only ever performed at battle, but I also like performing at battle, you are definitely aware of an audience. And I don't know if if there's anything that we can, like what sort of steps we need to take in order to get more of an education aspect to battle, because I think we all like go to this event and we watch these dances, but we have no idea what any of it means. I remember I was watching Bayani Han's battle piece. It was right after we'd performed, and the judges started giving their critiques, and they started saying that, oh, a Danag is a vampire, and then everyone in the audience went, oh, like they all finally understood. So I don't know how to foster the like educational aspect, because I know last year they actually like introduced the legends or the stories behind those dances before, but a lot of times like the crowd gets really rowdy, and like that's not really anything you can control. So I think, you know, even though like I know like Nico was saying like cultural like misrepresentation is eminent, and I think by kind of, even though we try with the best intentions to, you know, really learn and respect all these cultures, I think we all need to take a step back, whether you're a performer or you're just someone who's going to watch battle. I think we all need to take like a step back and really think about why are we here? What are these dances representing, and how can we do better, even with, you know, even though we are living in the States and the Philippines is so far away, and what can we do to like really educate ourselves in the best way possible in order to get what we can from battle. Yeah, do you want to go ahead?
Well, no, actually, this is just for me. I kind of just want to go through everyone. I guess just reintroduce yourself, because I kind of came halfway through again. Just reintroduce yourself, and can you tell me your affiliation? I'm kind of under the sorry. Is there anyone here that was never, who was in this discussion, was never affiliated with battle? Okay, that answers the question. Okay, never mind.
The Marissa and Kelly were not.
Did they watch it?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
Wait, does watching count?
Yes.
All right. All right.
Yeah, so I'm Marissa, and this is Kelly.
Hi.
We're both from the University of Kentucky,
Oh,
and
okay, so that's why.
Yeah, that's why we couldn't go to battle. It's too far for us.
and I'm the secretary for our FOSO club.
Okay.
And I'm the cultural night chair for our fossil club.
Okay. So besides you two, so virtually everyone here has been in it or been affiliated with battle in some way. Is that kind of mostly safe to assume? Okay. That's just kind of like I'm not obviously I'm on the West Coast, so kind of. But like well, like, you know, let me share that. Like, it kind of is significant because it's kind of, with viral success of the internet, it's kind of significant in like how we, over here in the performing arts space, we know about battle that's happening like, I don't know, 2,000 miles away. Even though like on the West Coast is probably like one of the biggest population density of like Filipino Americans and performing arts groups and PCNs and all that stuff. So it's just interesting how like how we're very aware of how significant battle is going on, how it's happening. Yeah. Yeah.
Could I just ask, like, what do, like, because of your experience on the West Coast, what do you think of battle in an event like that?
I really don't want to say, but okay. Don't stone me, everyone. It's okay. I'm okay. I'm mixed about it, but like, okay. I want to talk about like what I've heard in response to Battle of Banner from what I've talked. Obviously the average Filipino American who like doesn't know anything about their culture, second, third generation Filipino American would know anything, and they probably like Battle of the Bamboo, which is cool. I feel like there is like substance in it for everyone at all levels, no matter how culturally sound you think you are. But I guess for me, specifically being in the Philippine performing arts space, where like we have dance companies and we have musical ensembles and we have like we have fielded research, and we go to the Philippines every so often and we meet with these people in villages. Just from what I've heard in that regard is that it's kind of dangerous. I mean, I haven't really kept up with battle in a while, but I'm busy. I'm sorry. Sorry. But I guess when I first ever heard of bamboo, I'm busy. I'm sorry. Okay. What was I saying? The first time I ever like heard of Battle of the Bamboo was a couple years ago. I don't really remember what year, but some school. I don't want to say the school because I even remember. It was one of the winners. It was a reinterpretation of Tagabili, I want to say. That was the one that I feel like went viral, at least at the time. I don't know if others went viral again, but we talked about it a whole lot. And especially because that was a reimagining of an already reimagined piece. And I'm not sure if like the people who are part of it really knew that, or the audience, or the judges, or how it's graded. But like I think what's interesting about this is that it is like a lot of what happens when it comes to competition. I think what we all forget is that like it's not vernacular, which means that it's not folkloric in a sense. Well, vernacular as in like does everyone know what vernacular dance is? So like doing it for intrinsic value, kind of like for yourself, you don't really like, it's not staged, it's not you just do it. Like you go out of the club, that's vernacular dance technically. You know what I'm saying? And that's what a lot of like folk dances come from. And I guess just for me also, like knowing the people who choreographed the original Tagabili, the National Bayanihan Dance Company in the Philippines, and understanding how problematic that is in its own, even regardless of all the research they did, and then kind of seeing it, I don't want to say watered down, but transformed so much in a way that like this is now the new norm. And like I'm pretty sure you all know that other PCNs are kind of reimagining that version as well. I don't know if you know that, but that is kind of happening. Not a whole lot, but enough where it's noticeable. And that's what I guess I mean, like, why it's dangerous and why competitive dance is kind of interesting, because you're essentially grading cultural appreciation, and that's kind of the weird part. Like, you want to say this is an event where you appreciate culture or whatever, so be it, in whatever forms you have. It's just interesting when you have to grade. How do you grade an appreciation of a culture? Because I'm pretty sure, I mean, like, just being realistic, if I like had one of my good friends in Davao City in the Philippines do the traditional pangalan by yourself solo on stage, probably not gonna win. Like, just like, just being realistic. So it's interesting how, like, the ones that are winning, and it's creating this like significant, I guess, wave, because like people are looking at that part of our culture and like, yes, I'm proud to be Filipino because I saw this misrepresented Philippine folk dance in a competitive space, which was reimagined by another reimagining. Do you see what I'm saying? And that's what a lot of performing artists over here, especially research-based ones. I mean, if you go to like a random like Phil-Am like college, they probably don't even know what battle is or the significance of like why it's significant. But do you see what I'm saying? Like that, in that way, it's dangerous, and I feel like, and we're not alone in this. Like there are like Chinese classical competitions. There's a whole lot in the Polynesian space. I guess the difference is that at least with the way a lot of the Pacific Islander cultures are handling their competitions, is they're starting to be more aware that there is this new form of theatricality and yeah, I guess theatricality and modernism and I guess for us as Filipino Americans, since we don't really just that being that Filipino Americans, we have this idea that sorry, I'm losing my topic, but I'm sorry, that'll probably come up later. But like that's kind of what I've experienced when talking to a whole bunch of people who are specifically performing artists. That's we kind of share this kind of like, not that it's a bad thing, but that it can be very dangerous, because when you set a bar like that and things go viral on the internet and they think, oh, that's what Filipino culture is, when I don't want to say that it isn't or isn't inspired, but I personally have a hard time saying that it's authentic. I hate that word. I really hate the word authentic, but yeah. And it's weird because it's an event. It's one of like, it's probably one of the biggest events in that area, right? Yeah, like because obviously because we heard about it, and it's just interesting that in this really huge event that basically embodies appreciating Filipino culture, is kind of promoting and judge it, because it's competitive. It's kind of promoting those who are going out and beyond and being over the top and showcasing our culture in a way that's really easy for us to digest, easy for us, or as people who have not grown up in those specific villages. And from what I've seen in battle, it's most of the people that are being represented in battle. Those groups of people are usually Katutubo, or the indigenous people. So it's, and I'm gonna say it, especially in the Midwest, I'm probably gonna say that probably 99% of y'all are not Katutubo. Just, I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but like when that's kind of the discussion that's happening in regards to battle, but it's not specifically battle. It's kind of battle and PCNs in general. So not, yeah. So that's kind of, sorry if I went off on a tangent, like talked a lot, but that's kind of, yeah.
No, I think that's really like hearing something like that is very needed in our community because we are very in like once we don't really step out of our bubble of the Midwest, and hearing something from the West Coast, especially from someone from a perspective of someone who is in the Filipino art space, I think that's something that we really needed to hear, and I think a lot of you are like kind of processing that kind of information. So yeah, we actually have someone new. Bradley, do you want to introduce yourself and where you're
Bradley.
Hi, Bradley.
What's up, y'all? Hi, my name's Bradley. I go to University of the Pacific in Northern California. I'm good friends with Nico, who spent like a couple minutes talking.
I didn't even notice you were there.
Yeah, I don't know if there's anything else I need to say.
Cool. Nice to meet you. I'm Maddie. I'm from the Midwest Association of Filipino Americans. I am the co-outreach chair. Do you guys want to reintroduce yourselves down the line? Kayla?
Hey, I'm Kayla, and I'm the MAFA treasurer.
Just popcorn it.
Cool. Kenny, go.
Hi, I'm Kenny. I was the MAFA vice president external last year. What else? Let's join.
Marissa and Kelly.
Popcorn.
Oh, never mind.
Yeah, they can go ahead.
Oh, okay. I'm Marissa, and this is Kelly.
Hi.
We're both from the University of Kentucky, and I'm the secretary for FASO.
And I'm the cultural night chair for FASO. I think that's it.
Yeah.
You guys can popcorn to someone.
Popcorn to AJ.
Hello, my name is AJ. I'm a freshman at the University of Michigan. I'm an intern for FASA, and I actually have to get going. Sorry. I have somewhere to be. But thank you so much for including me. This was a really informative discussion. I really appreciated this.
Thanks, AJ, for coming.
Thank you for having me. Have a good night, everyone.
You too. And
Thanks.
then,
Bye.
Tina, do you want to go?
Yeah. I'm Tina Gaitunko. I'm from the University of Michigan. I'm a freshman, and I'm also a intern for this semester. But I also have to get going. I'm sorry that I have to leave early, but I really, it was kind of unexpected that Christian messaged me, but I'm really glad that I was able to be part of this conversations and like learn and just be in dialogue with different philams. So I really, really appreciated this. So thanks for including me.
Thanks, Tina, for coming.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on to our next discussion question, and taking especially what Nico has given, the information that Nico has given us, how would you define cultural appreciation? Not appropriation, appreciation. Even taking in the idea that misrepresentation may even be imminent, even with the best intentions and the best research.
I would say cultural appreciation is more of like looking into like the culture, doing more like research instead of being like, because I like going to a predominantly white school down like in the South in like University of Kentucky. There's a lot of appropriation of culture because these people, they come from very small like towns, and they'll be like, I had Chinese food once. I'm cultured, and I'm like, no, that's not being cultured. That's a little bit of appropriation, but like I'm not going to say anything because these people just don't understand the difference between appropriation and appreciation. I would say appreciation is more of looking into it, going to things that are similar to like PCN and like other multicultural nights too, because at least you're putting an effort to appreciate the culture that whatever is being presented to you.
Wait, is it cool if I can give my 2 cents? I think that it's virtually impossible to like completely appreciate our culture nowadays, because if you wanted to, then you'd have to like go all the way back there and relive exactly what they were living. So if we were to do like an accurate representation of like what we studied and what we tried to figure out, then I think it'd be like, we can make a really good attempt at it, but I don't think we could ever like 100% appreciate it the way that everyone else thinks we should appreciate it. So I think what we're doing now is a good way, is like the best of what we can do. I don't think we can go any better in terms of what we're doing. And that kind of brings like the advisor for my org, I think you know him, Xavier Hernandez. If you don't know him, he's like a PhD in like Asian studies or something, and he's from the West Coast and he knows a lot about the dance and everything. He told me that like he brought up this light that like the culture between Filipino American and like actually being Filipino is like becoming like this new thing where like this is our culture, like PCNs, battle, everything that we're trying to do, like that this is what our culture is now. And it's kind of, I mean, I guess it is like a mishmash of like cultural appropriation and a cultural appreciation, no matter what your definition is. But like, I think that just brings to light that the new Filipino, like in America, is like, it's just changing, and like that this is becoming what we have. And I don't know, that's all I have to say about it right now. But like, does anyone else have anything to say about what I'm trying to say?
If I may say something, I think like cultural appreciation, I think, where do I start? I guess I'll give an example. So since we're talking about like performing arts and stuff like that, one way that I thought was like a good way to use performing arts that wasn't in like cultural appropriation was San Francisco State University at their PCN. This was like 2 years ago during like the Lumad killings that were happening, that got big news around like 2 years ago. They actually used one of their performances to like bring more like awareness to the issues that those people are facing. And so it's not enough to like just put on like their attire for a day, but to actually be aware of like issues that they go through, and then using what like platform or privilege that you have to advocate for them. I thought that was a really good, cool way of like, it's not enough to just like appreciate, but also like, because I feel like appreciating a culture also comes with like a privilege. Like there's a privilege to taste, quote unquote, like taste other cultures, and then just step away and like not have to worry about it. But there are people they can't just step away from like, their culture, and they're literally being like persecuted for being that culture. And then here we are in the United States, like putting it on for a day and then taking it off. So yeah, that's 2 cents.
What I think one of the biggest differences between cultural appreciation and cultural appropriation, no matter how you define it, I feel like on average, the people who are kind of initiating the conversation in what way? Like no one really talked, I mean, in the context of, I can really only talk about the context of film and space and arts and stuff, but no one really talked about cultural appreciation until those minority groups started talking about cultural appropriation. So it's really, I think that's it's the best. I feel like one of the biggest difference is that power imbalance right there. Like Bradley said, it is a privilege to appreciate another culture. But yeah, like there are these, like similarly, like no one really talked about all lives matter until Black Lives Matter was a thing. So I think that kind of, in similar ways, of course not the same, not one-to-one, but very similarly, like people didn't talk about cultural appreciation until cultural appropriation was being brought up by those minorities, like I said. So I think that's just something like, just to think about, that like, I guess generally the ones who are talking about cultural appropriation are the ones who are, something is being, I guess, taken from them in some sort of way, as opposed to appreciation. It's a privilege.
I'm sorry, Betty. So I don't really know too much about like cultural appreciation or like the topic of cultural appreciation. And I'm very familiar with like cultural appropriation, with how it's problematic and certainly damaging. But something like I think about, especially for like PCNs and like performing at PCNs, is like it's kind of our own culture that we're building as Filipino Americans, like college students specifically, like hosting these PCNs, like showcasing, different aspects of Filipino culture. Even sorry, like a side tangent, but so something one of Yumish Vasa's co-presidents brought up to me was that, like, is it problematic that a lot of like the Filipino, like a whole subset of the dances, barrio dances, are almost all like kind of Christianity or Catholicism and Spanish kind of influenced. So this is a completely different tangent, but like how, I don't know, like how are we? What affected like colonization and like the years of Spanish colonialism have, like what effect did that have on the dance? And is it like, should we be celebrating these dances? Should we be like, focusing more on tribal dances when we perform at PCNs? I don't know. This is like just random things that I think about sometimes, but like going back to like PCNs and I don't know if how cultural appreciation ties into it, but I certainly find it hard to label like performing in at a PCN, performing like traditional Filipino dances as cultural appropriation. I think it's, I don't know. I think it's our way of connecting back to Filipino culture. I mean, I've never been to the Philippines. I'm half Filipino. I was born in Michigan and raised in Michigan, and there's no way really for me, like growing up, there was never like a good time, enough money to go back to the Philippines for my mom and my family. So like, I don't know. I think it's really easy when you have, I guess, like, especially on the West Coast, when you have the resources and the privilege of having this wealth of information and knowledge about the Philippines, or even like a lot of people on the East Coast, it's really easy to kind of like look down or kind of throw shade at like the Midwest for what we do. But today it's really like all we've got. We've got to create our own like subculture, in the Midwest, in this vacuum of like Filipino culture. We're falling apart at the end of this, but I hope like some of you guys understand what I'm saying. Like this is what we've got. This is what what we have, and I don't know. I don't. I think we need to like, I don't know, celebrate our culture, our heritage in one way or another. And PCNs are like the most popular and most common way. So I don't know. I understand. I understand like battle could be a little problematic, judging like based on who is more cultural, who's more authentic. But I think as far as PCNs go, like and performing the dance ourselves, I think that those are like really important to us and probably to people all across the country. But yeah.
I kind of understand like what you mean, like because like when you mentioned like the colonialism, like when like from Spanish, like with like tinikling, like yeah, it's like a recognized dance in the Philippines, but also like people don't really, like most people who sing tinikling that aren't Filipino, like I don't think they know the true origins of that dance, because the origins of that dance is like when we were enslaved, like when the Philippines was enslaved by Spain, like there were actually like thorns attached to the bamboo poles, and like Filipinos would just would just like stand in the middle, like they didn't move, like they would just like it would literally just like hurt their ankles. So like I don't know, like it's just like when you mentioned that, like talking about like the colonialism from Spain like earlier, that just like stood out to me. So.
We actually just had someone join us. Do you want to introduce yourself? You muted yourself.
Okay, sorry.
It's okay.
I'm actually in class right now, so I didn't want to take class. But it's okay. It's about to start, but although in like 30 minutes. But my name is Mar. I am from San Diego, California, and I go to UC San Diego. Okay, that's all I'm gonna say. I'm gonna listen and type stuff out. Okay, bye.
Thank you. All right. So we're gonna move on to our next discussion question. How do you tell the difference between cultural appropriation and cultural appreciation? I think with like the kind of insights that we've been having of like, especially, I know this is an ongoing conversation in the Midwest of like what it means to be a Midwest Filipino American or a Midwest Filipino. How would you describe cultural? Where's the line, and when do you cross it? Is I think the general question here. And it doesn't have to be in Filipino culture. If you want to use other cultures as examples, you can go ahead.
I think like I don't know. It's kind of like a gray area of like when it like what's the extent, because like I remember like on like social media, like people like celebrities who like would post like themselves in like Indian headgear at Coachella, or like people like Kim Kardashian or Kylie Jenner like wearing like boxer braids and like
or like Kim's recent like hair color change because she was like trying to imitate like Indian hair, like that kind of.
Yeah, like I don't know. It's just like maybe like want like I don't know, like something tame like with hair. Like I guess that's acceptable. I don't know. I'm still like, but it's just there's kind of like if you do it often, then yeah, that seems like okay, that's a little bit too much. Like if like one instance of that, then that's fine. But like definitely like with like I remember like with people posting pictures of themselves with like Indian headwear at Coachella, that definitely seems like a far line, because that's like actual like that's actually like respected like to Native Americans, and like people who wear like Indian bindis on their forehead, like that's like I feel like that definitely draws the line, because like people just use that as like a fashion statement versus like in Indian culture that's like an actual like significance to their culture.
So you're saying like if it's significant, like extremely significant, that's like taking it too far. But if it's like something that they do every day,
like I don't know, it just like it depends on like what it is, but if that makes sense. I don't know, like it's like I'm also kind of confused with my words too, but like it's just like I don't know, it's there's so many ways it can go, like it can go to an extent, like go too far, but like I don't know, it's kind of hard. Like I don't know, I'm really bad at describing this, but
yeah, I think I know what you're saying. Like usually I think to figure out like the line, it's like very subjective what the line is, but usually the way I see it is like if you're wearing someone else's culture as like an offensive or very like you're just abusing their culture, like you said, like using fashion statements like that, I guess, to make money, and like not actually because you like really want like really know anything about the culture, but more like you just wanted to make a fashion statement. That would be somewhat of a cultural like I think that's cultural appropriation, not appreciation. But like if you really spend the time to like learn about the culture and like properly like and respectfully like try to mimic, not mimic, I would say, like I don't know what the word would be, but like I think that's where you could draw the line And I think that's where everyone draws the line, but it's just figuring out what the line is, which is what the question is. So, and now we're back at square one.
Why is the line not? Why is it not drawn from the people who it came from? And I kind of do feel like that's where the line is. It's only like whatever community it originated in. I feel like kind of going back to our first discussion question, but like what the extent of cultural appropriation is, I feel like that's kind of for the original group to decide whether it is or not. Not necessarily. That's why I have a hard time like believing that like it's on a like on like a subjective level, like I don't, or on a personal level. Like it's more of like how the community like treats it. And do they respect it? Do they acknowledge it? And is it in that context? I feel like that's kind of, that is more of the extent. And what, and I guess at least for me, I would follow the lines drawn by those who it came from, as opposed to what I believe is cultural appropriation, what is cultural appreciation. Because I could believe anything I want. I want to do artistically, do things like that, or I want to appreciate this culture. But if they're like, no, you can't partake in our ritual because you're not of whatever blood and you haven't done this, and then you know what I'm saying? Like, it's kind of not in my, I don't know, at least for me, I don't believe I would have a right to participate in that culture. And many people would say like, yeah, like, why are you wearing a bahag? Why are you wearing like all these things? Why are you playing Fulintang music like that? When I guess me personally, I would feel the most comfortable like if they would bless me with their culture, as opposed to I want to thank you for your culture. I'm going to use this in whatever way I see fit. I don't know, it's not that to that extent, but that's personally how I would want to go about it. Have them draw the line. And I know it's hard sometimes, but
I may go. I agree with Nico. Similar to everything he's saying, like I think one question you need to ask is like, were you invited by that culture to partake in it? If you are, that's totally cool. Like, you can go to Japan, and then if they invite you to like put on their attire, they're like, cool. That's fine. But then if you weren't like invited by that culture to like partake in their culture, I think drawing the line between appreciation and appropriation is thinking about, are you benefiting from it without reciprocating a similar amount of like benefit to the people that like it came from. For example, like, are you doing I think it's also important to make the distinction that just because you're Filipino doesn't mean like you can partake in every single culture in the Philippines. I think there's absolutely no reason for all these islands to be grouped together other than the fact that Spain said y'all are one group. So I think, first of all, clear that up. And then thinking about that is, if you wouldn't do it to like Native Americans, then would you do it to like indigenous people in the Philippines? Again, recognizing that just because we all exist in the arbitrary border of what's called the Philippines doesn't give us the right to like every single culture in the Philippines, especially taking into account the power dynamic. Again, like if you're like a lowland Christianer versus an indigenous person. Yeah, and so with that being said, are you doing something to speak out against like anti-indigenous sentiment? And that goes not just for Native Americans, but also indigenous people in the Philippines, like the Kalinga or any other indigenous group. Yeah, because like a lot of you have said, there can be some gray lines sometimes. But again, are you doing enough to speak out, to use your privilege to bring awareness to their issues, if you are going to even remotely use like their culture? Yeah.
Kind of piggybacking, short thing. Kind of piggybacking off what you were saying. Since you used the Kalinga people as an example, just so that just some food for thought for everyone. Like even like let's say like you are Kalinga. Like from what I've seen, and a lot of other different ethnic groups in the Philippines, but like for example, like Kalinga, like there's so many different tribes of the Kalinga, a lot of different villages, and they have their own cultures and their own traditions that they pass on through family, and not another person of Kalinga descent would be able to partake in that. So it's just some food for thought. Like it's even more so than just of that specific ethnic group. It's from that village, of that family, and so it's just some food for thought.
Yeah, I think I definitely agree with Nico and Bradley. I think it kind of brings up the idea. I think Nico said it about it sort of cultural appreciation didn't become a thing until cultural appropriation was being talked about, much like All Lives Matter wasn't. Like that's the first thing that I thought about when you brought that up, that All Lives Matter didn't exist or wasn't talked about until Black Lives Matter came out. So like really, I think like being invited to share the culture, I think is the best, and I think the way that all people should be celebrating their culture, especially through performing arts. It's really, I know it's like really, really hard to get that sort of invitation, especially being thousands of miles away. But I think, in doing, research and communicating with people, I remember my freshman year when I did a yakan dance, and like looking back at it now, I think like we definitely could have communicated with them, because I like Instagrammed a picture, and like the yakan people, like, or someone of yakan descent in the Philippines actually Instagrammed me and was like, this is amazing, this is great. And I was like, why didn't we talk to them before? They could have given us so much more insight, and we really could have connected on that sort of level. So just kind of like looking back, I think now like my idea going into performing arts is very different. So thank you for that. Moving on to our next discussion question. When and where do you see cultural appropriation the most? Halloween costumes, media, fashion, anywhere you want to take that.
For me, personally, I think that it's nearly everywhere. I can't say like specifically in media it is, or specifically like in this place or this place. Because in the media, like, there's a bunch of it. Like, in the movie Aloha with like Emma Stone, that she was a half Hawaiian and a half, I forgot what part of Asia, but I know she was like supposed to be half Hawaiian and half Asian, but she's a pure white girl that is playing that part, which is just not right, and I believe that's appropriation. Also, like I said, going to a predominantly white school is everywhere, and like you can testify to that. Like it's ridiculous that that I see it everywhere, and sometimes I don't even notice it because I'm getting so used to hearing people just being like I don't know, just saying like very rude things. And especially to me, they'll be like, oh, where are you from? I'm like, oh, Chicago. No, where are you really from? And like I say Chicago because that's where I was born, that's where I was raised. And then like, but I know like they're actually trying to ask me like ethnically, where am I from? And like, I don't know. And I believe that's also like appropriation, that they're out there like asking that. And I know they don't mean to be rude, but they're just, it's just like a weird thing that like I feel like I get culturally I don't know what word I'm trying to find, but yeah, that's like my take on it.
Oh wait, oh sorry, but this kind of like refers like a little bit towards like the last question, but like I don't know, like this kind of bothered me when this happened, but we had an event, we participated in an event last semester, and where we did snickling, and like we were like showing people how to do it, like how to do the dance, and this one organization, it was like the like Muslim Student Association, I think. Like they were like practicing the dance, like trying to like learn it and like using the sticks, and like they were trying to incorporate their dance, like like one of their cultural dances with using the snickling poles, and like it kind of made me uncomfortable.
They kind of just took over as well, which also made it even worse. That we were just like, oh, we're super uncomfortable with you doing this.
Yeah, like I was kind of scared to say anything, but like I was just like watching them, and like I remember they were telling me, like they were showing me like their dance, like to see how they can incorporate it, but like it just made me uncomfortable thinking like I understand you think it's cool to like tinikling is to you tinikling is cool, and like it's interesting you want to use it in your dance, but like, I don't know, it just made me uncomfortable. I'm like,
that you want to like use our culture in your culture, even though that happens like every day in America. It's like Americans take Hispanic culture, Asian culture, even like their own culture from like Europe, Middle Eastern culture, African culture, and don't like, I don't know, they don't give the rights from that, I guess. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but
yeah.
The way, I guess, channeling back to the way you feel about that, I'm just going to attest, I'm just a messenger, but I get a lot of the same dialogue from these misrepresented groups in the Philippines about the way, I mean, I'm at fault too. I mean, I practice contemporary Philippine dance all the time. But like, I guess with what you felt about like people not understanding the culture, but want to, I guess, kind of put their own spin on it and made you feel uncomfortable. And there's a whole other community of these indigenous people that we are portraying through battle, through all these PCNs, even through like the dance companies that I'm a part of, allegedly doing research. Where that feeling that you're feeling is exactly how we're making the natives feel. So it's just interesting how you say that, because we're kind of putting it on ourselves, even though we're Filipino. We're like putting it on, like Filipinos are doing it to Filipinos, because with our film, we're like changing it or putting our own glam twist on it. It's
Yeah, like it's just like I don't know. I think the reason why I found uncomfortable is because like I don't know, like that never really happened to me before, and like I don't know. I think it was just because like it's the first time like I've kind of experienced that something like that happening, because like I don't know, growing up I never had like those like I never had people ask me like where are you really from, like I don't know, I never really had anything like a negative experience in terms of like my culture. So
that's crazy, because it wasn't until I got here, because she's like actually from Kentucky, she's from Louisville, and I'm like from Chicago, and like when I came down here I experienced that, but like you never experienced that, like you've lived here your entire life.
Like the Filipino community is like really small in Kentucky versus like in Chicago or California. So like I can't exactly relate to like living in like a large like Filipino community, but yeah.
The if I had time, I'm gonna say what I was thinking about the question of like where I see appropriation the most. I see it the most like everywhere when everyone is appropriating Black culture. I think people forget that like even us, like Asian Americans, Mexican Americans, can also appropriate like Black culture. I mean, whether it's like language or like dance, all these things that community has created, and yet here we are partaking in all of in like music and dance, but then people are still silent on Black Lives Matter. People are still silent on a lot of like Black issues. I think that's where I see it the most. I mean, like, you see even on like Twitter with like your language or like memes and stuff like that. Like, think about all the dance moves that were created, like Nene Whip, and then other memes you see like, and then you see like Damn Daniel, it's like this, middle class white boy, and he gets on Ellen, but then all the kids that like made like other vines or other like dance moves, you don't see them going on Ellen, getting monetary like, monetary rewards, whatever. So yeah, so just for us to be conscious about that, about what we're appropriating, even especially when it comes to like Black culture.
I think especially I like the video that we watched was made during Halloween, or was like made for around the Halloween season. I think especially around that time we see a lot of cultural appropriation of costumes, and I think like that's when the big discussion of cultural appropriation comes up, and then it kind of subsides and everyone kind of forgets about it. And I think that happens with a lot of like really big issues where something bad happens, we all talk about it for about a week and then it just goes away. So I think like, you know, as Bradley said, like always being consciously aware of the things that happen, and you know, as new like Instagrams and other like things come out and we see them, like really being conscious of those things. Does anyone have any other reactions to share about that question? Okay, so we can move on to our final question before our closing remarks. This one's kind of a long one, so here we go. So the first question, it's a two-part question. The first question is, who do you feel has the right to claim a certain part of culture, for example, dancers or clothing, and perform and showcase it? How much is it the right to ownership / transformation of culture based on ethnicity, skin color, socioeconomic background, historical knowledge, and creative intention? I think this was made in with the intention of talking about performances like Battle or BCN. So if you can speak to that with personal experience, definitely do, but you don't have to as well.
I mean, this kind of goes back to like what Nico was saying, where like, I think like I definitely agree with him where it was like, if if you to have like 100% like the right to claim that certain part of the culture, it comes from the people who live that culture, the original people. Like I feel like to have like they would have like that full right to claim that culture, and I guess like perform and showcase it because it truly is their own culture. And like it also like if like we were to do something with it, like yeah, there's this eminent cultural appropriation. We could try our best at it, but like it's eminent. It'll be there because it's not truly ours. Like 100% ours.
You know, there are those who argue that if you're not within like that family, I guess it goes back to a lot of these artistic pieces that we take inspirations from for Battle or PCNs or Philippine dance troupes. They come from specific villages and specific families that have their own way, and like they pass like, and it's not just dance. There's also like, you know, martial artists like they teach them to their kids and then their kids' kids, and then it's like kind of like a family tradition, and that's kind of where the culture like originates from. And there are people who would argue like if you're not within the family, then you shouldn't practice that. So that's, I mean, I'm a little conflicted with saying that, but I guess just relaying information that there are people who are still in that mindset, but it does make sense. It's a family tradition. It's their culture essentially that they gave to their offsprings and then within their family, and then I mean, I just thought that would be nice to share that, you know, not just like with dance and like, you know, obviously like with food, like you have like with martial arts, the different studios are different. Yeah, when it comes to food, like I'm pretty sure if we ask all of our parents to make like chicken adobo, it'll all be made differently. And it's just like that's kind of one of the ways that like it's within. I guess a lot of tradition and culture stems from placing it down in within family households and contexts. So it's interesting to say who can claim part of it. Well, the simple answer would be, oh, if you're part of that family. Well, it's kind of hard to say that nowadays, but it's something to think about.
Similar to what everyone was saying, like you can never truly like not appropriate. And so again, I think a lot of us kind of think that kind of have that consensus. But in addition, since we'll never actually truly be able to like not appropriate, I think again we need to ask ourselves, what are we doing to advocate for those or with those communities? What are you doing to like help their struggle, put your privilege on the line to advocate with those communities for whatever, for their own self-determination, their own ability to live, and like human rights. That's never enough to say that like, oh, I'm allowed to appropriate your culture because like I've protested, I've gone to this protest, I've like done all that. It'll never give you the right, but I mean, again, at least it's something that like you actually care about their own like humanity, their own right to practice their culture without persecution. So yeah.
I think something I kind of want to hear an opinion on. I think is the creative intention part of this question. So like when you're making a dance or choreographing a dance or really doing anything for your student organization, like not even just dances or just making events, like people who have like Filipino language nights and things like that, how much is creative intention important to you in whether or not you are culturally appropriating something or not? I think like especially because this is a battle reflection recap, I'm really thinking like the whole theatricality and like being as creative as we can in telling these stories. It adds to like the entertainment aspect, and we want to I think at some level we always want to entertain people, and like that's really how we get our reputations in performing battle. And I think like that's why people from not the Midwest have heard of battle. So how do you take it apart creative intention as part of creating things that have to do with Filipino culture or any specific part of the Filipino culture?
Just one real thing to add on to that. So I know, so like what I don't remember which year, but one of the past few years, FASA got critiqued for not being original enough or taking enough creative liberty with their dance, which really like a really backhanded comment from the judges, because we like the choreographer for that year like did a lot of research on like the background of the dance and the people performing it, and they worked really hard to like create, again using the word authentic, like an authentic performance or like a traditional performance, just to be told that they didn't take enough creative liberty with it was like really, I don't know, it just felt like it felt like really problematic to say, because like you're asking us to like create new, I guess like modified, like create new traditional dance, but then also that like that's something that we're being critiqued on in a competition that's supposed to be about celebrating traditional Filipino culture and celebrating like, I don't know, like not originality in the sense of like new, but originality is like the origins of like it's. So I don't know. That's just something to add on.
Are you gonna say something more? Okay. Oh, lol. If I can add one thing, I think when it comes to like that case, like what Kenny was saying, I personally think competition is inherently flawed in like this whole like thing. Like you're never going to. It's literally impossible because like there really shouldn't be any like winners or losers when it comes to culture. You're never gonna find like a perfect balance between competition. I think competition is like inherently flawed. And then if it's for like entertainment, then I think you also need to ask yourself, whose idea of entertainment, who are you trying to entertain? Because like what one person thinks is entertaining might be completely different to another person and even a different culture. Are we entertaining mainly from what we understand as theatricality, which is largely based off like Western like standards? And so entertainment in general, or entertainment inherently is like subjective at that point also. So yeah, I'm not sure where else to go with that, but I don't think culture, in the end, I don't think culture should be a competition. I don't think that's the best way to celebrate it, personally.
I agree, and especially with the competition atmosphere, like having judges or however many judges you have, I don't think any one of them are going to be as, they'll tell all, like know all about the Filipino culture and every single indigenous tribe that's a part of it. I don't think that anyone has the right to say that, yes, you were culturally accurate, but also like have the know-all definition of being entertaining. So I definitely agree. Any other questions or answers to that discussion question before our closing remarks? Okay, so for our closing remarks, we're just going to have everyone share one takeaway from their discussion and one word to describe how you're feeling. I'll go first since I'm already unmuted, but one takeaway from this discussion is really just thinking about how I've thought about Filipino dancing, and on one hand, it's like very like close to my heart because it's definitely something that's made me feel appreciative of who I am as a Filipino American. But I also know that there's room to grow as like where I can begin to understand like where people who are really from the Philippines and like are actually really have this culture in their lives every day. I think there's room for me to grow in understanding that and really kind of figuring out like where my headspace is in really trying to grow into that sort of insight. One word to describe I'm feeling insightful. I think I'm like having a lot of like thoughts and opinions going on in my head, so that's really cool. And I didn't really expect that I didn't really expect this many insights and knowledge to like come into my brain at this point. So this is awesome. We can just popcorn this around. So Marissa and Kelly, you can go next.
Okay. Oh gosh, I don't know. I guess like one takeaway is just like, I guess like kind of getting a better understanding between like more insight with especially like cultural appropriation, like I don't know, kind of like getting more insight. I guess like both appreciation and appropriation, especially coming from like the inside of like performing like with the arts. And I guess like one word to describe it is just like I feel like more informed. Like I've heard discussions and like read articles like about about cultural appreciation and appropriation before, but like I don't know, it's just like the first time I've ever had like a discussion about this. So like I feel like I've learned a lot.
Okay, for me, I would say like one word to describe this is that I feel so much more educated on this topic. I've like tried looking into it, and like as of now, I'm like kind of writing a paper about it, and that's why I also want to join this discussion to see if I can take away more. And I definitely did, especially hearing others' opinions. Like, I didn't really think about how like cultural appreciation wasn't mentioned until appropriation, and like also finding the fine line between like appropriation and appreciation. I feel that like hearing so many different opinions and like just hearing all this, it made me feel better and like grow a better understanding of like how other people view it versus how I view it. Yeah, just feeling more educated about things.
You guys can go ahead and popcorn to someone else.
Okay. Somebody. Nico.
I think one of the most interesting things about this whole discussion is kind of like how silent we're all being, and it's I don't believe it's because of awkwardness. I think it's more like because it's a lot of information that's happening and we're all processing. I mean, like that's what I like to believe, and I think that's just the takeaway. Like we're all I think I like to say that like we're silent because we're so open to learning and hearing about each other and kind of applying that. We're challenging each other here and there, but I think I guess for a takeaway, I'm a little bit more proud that this conversation is happening in some way, like cross continental, like all different points of the U.S. right now. That's pretty cool right now. Even though it's pretty much centered around Battle of the Bamboo, it's happening in one place, but we have people in Kentucky and people on the West Coast, and we're talking about this. So I guess, I don't know, for me, I'm just happy that this is happening. I guess, yeah, that. Popcorn. Is it Kenneth?
Yeah, it's Kenny, but yeah. I'm really glad that like we were able to have this conversation. I kind of I think not last year, but the year before, I went to this conference called EPIC, Empowering Filipino Youth Through Collaboration in Philadelphia, and I met Bradley and Mar there, and met a bunch of other people, and spent like from everywhere across the United States and the Philippines, and it was really, I guess, my exposure to Filipinos not from the Midwest, and it was a really eye-opening experience. And that's like when I first I talked to people about battle, got their opinions, and it seemed like after talking to them that battle, or like I don't know, that's when I first started thinking about like how it's kind of problematic to judge performances based on like authenticity and like perform or like entertainment value and stuff like that, and like kind of pointed out like some of the flaws in Battle of the Bamboo. And like the past 2 years I've competed, but I don't know, it was more so because I guess it's the only like big performance we have. It's the only like venue for us to dance and perform like that. Really, so I don't know. It's like an important experience for FASA, but I really agree that I don't know if it's gonna happen next year or in the coming years, but I think as like a community we might want to start rethinking Battle of Bamboo and kind of like the toxic effects it has. I know from what I've heard in the past, it's like caused a lot of drama in the community. There, about who should have won, who didn't place, stuff like that. I think, like in general, it's just the competition has kind of driven a lot of people apart, and isn't really like, I don't know, it doesn't really represent what we should be doing as like Filipino Americans, part of the diaspora. We I don't know, but hopefully we're on the right track. I think it's good that we're having this conversation. Hopefully people outside of this call are watching. I haven't looked on YouTube, so I don't know if anyone's actually tuning in, but pay attention, especially those of you who are like going to be future leaders in MAFA, because I'm a senior, Maddie and Kayla are seniors. Bradley, I think, is like
a farm student now. I don't think he's been around for a while. Mar, you're I think a senior too. I don't know. I don't know like your background too much, Nico, but like I don't know. This is really important for the next generation, is what I'm saying. Sorry, I'm rambling for so long. Papa and Kayla.
You know, I've definitely learned a lot within this conversation. I loved hearing everyone's insights about everything, especially not really growing up in the culture. I guess like looking back at it, I've definitely like unintentionally appropriated the Filipino culture, but like, you know, it's a great learning experience. And like now I have a better understanding of, you know, things I should be more conscientious of. I think this conversation was great, and you know, I was glad to be a part of it. I guess like one word, I'd just be like thinking, I guess, just because like it was a lot to take in, but I definitely agree with a lot of your opinions, and now I know more. Yeah.
Go ahead, Bradley.
Sorry, Bradley.
It's okay. So I think, like, final thoughts. I think as problematic as like we've been, especially with like in terms of performing arts and as well as a bunch of other things, and obviously that should be fixed. Like, there's no excuse. But I think at the same time, if it wasn't for, say, like dancing, or however you like, you know, got involved with this, if it wasn't for that, then you wouldn't be talking about this. Similar to like what Nico was saying. And so, like, again, like as problematic as it is, I feel like dance has been a gateway for a lot of us, to actually start thinking more critically about ourselves, our identity, our community, our struggles, and stuff like that. And so I don't want people to like beat themselves up too much if they were problematic. And again, that's why we're having these conversations. And so in the end, like, you know, when you know better, do better. And I think that's all you really can. And then if I had to use like one word, I just think it's like community. Like I said, like we're all kind of like in this together, despite like the geographic distance. There's something that like ties us together, and it's important that we talk with each other, to discuss these, to learn from each other, because the school, like the institution, is not going to teach us. We have to learn these things from ourselves, from our community, and that's just as valuable as learning it in a classroom. So yes, that is all. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Before we go, Enzo sent his computer died, so he sent his closing remarks. He just wants to say that he agrees with Bradley that competition is inherently flawed, because he also believes that culture should not be in an atmosphere that promotes appropriation. And with that, that is our roundtable. Thank you all so much for coming, especially our visitors from the West Coast. We all appreciate your opinions, and I think we all have a lot to process, especially for those of you watching. Thank you again, and have a great. Go ahead.
I don't know if Mara did actually send in her closing.
Oh yeah, do you want to read it?
Sure. I have to go soon to listen to lecture now. LOL. I'm sorry, not speaking and not really participating enough. But being 100% honest, I get really critical when it comes to us talking about this topic. I feel like every year we have the same conversation about cultural appropriating Indigenous Philippine people. Well, what do we do to take steps towards a better future? I'm happy we're creating these spaces to talk about things like this, but what would you do to help solve this problem? Because we all know this isn't a problem that will be solved overnight. I'm happy we're having this conversation right now, especially since we're in different parts of the nation, LOL. So one word I feel right now is determined, question mark, because I'm determined to, really try doing research. Okay, because I'm determined to really try doing my research and actively pushing people to do research as well. That's
a good note to end on. All right. Thank you once again. Thank you all for coming. We really appreciate all of you taking time to be here, especially our visitors from the West Coast. everyone have a great day and happy International Women's Day. Bye, guys.
Bye. Thanks, guys.